Good morning and welcome, sir, from the TTFA. Good morning.
Hello, very good morning to you.
Very good, all right. Let's get into it. Our conversation is about safeguarding level 4. Let's speak to what we need to safeguard.
Safeguarding remains an extremely important part of football throughout the length and breadth of the globe that we are in. FIFA, in its wisdom, has understood after having discovered a lot of unscrupulous acts committed by adults on youths and vulnerable ones, and they have established the safeguarding program, that initiative taken in 2018. Trinidad and Tobago right now led by Mr. Gary St. Rose, who actually is the head of the manager of the players' welfare and well-being, along with the deputy manager in the person of Mr. Everton Alfred, and we have 21 others. There are three of us, one of us right now who is a level 5, and a couple of us who are level 4. But more importantly, with the recent establishment of the 21 others coming on board, we are able now to create a more receptive various committees to facilitate the dynamics of the safeguarding. So, for example, we have programs or committees set aside specifically to address the various aspects of safeguarding. And by and large, the safeguarding and as an entity is about creating a safe and comfortable environment to protect the young ones and the vulnerable ones from any harm, hurt, injury, or danger that they may incur while playing the lovely game of football. So having said about that and looking at the various areas that we are addressing, there are several committees that are responsible for areas under the safeguarding. So we have the training committee, that's the training of the various aspects of the safeguarding, the educational committee, the disciplinary investigation committee. We also have the codes of ethics committee, the PRO and communication committee, of which I'm part of, or I'm actually the chairperson. And we're all about about fostering and incorporating safeguarding Trinidad and Tobago. It's new. We know that it will take some time for persons to adjust, to adapt to, but we do see quite a number of persons who are responding to it favorably. And right now, at this present stage, Trinidad and Tobago, the framework and policy that we have created is now being utilized as a template by FIFA for the rest of the world to follow.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned hurt and you mentioned injury. I want you to differentiate the two, because I feel like I get hurt by an injury and he's hurt psychologically by maybe an abusive coach. Let's speak to the complaints that players may have when they are hurt and they have to tote that emotional pain maybe for a long time. When we discover the coach who is abusive, what happens? What position does FIFA take when this player is hurting as a result of maybe being absent because he can't take the abuse on the coach? Speak to that.
Very well. So just to refer quickly to injury. So for example, a player playing with a football boots on a very hard turf, not a multi-stud, one with normal pegs, it means that there was a level of misconduct or insensitivity in consideration by the coach, because it means that that player running on a hard surface with normal pegs, he certainly and will eventually get injured. And we are reminding the coaching staff of the various teams that the safety of the player is of paramount importance when engaging them in the game of football or any sport, as a matter of fact, because we do have training sessions for many other persons belonging to other sporting organizations too. As far as the hurting part of it, which becomes more mental, more psychological, and that in itself is one that we cannot just consider as historic, because a person who has gone through a traumatic experience, they may never ever, as we will know, forget such an experience. So sometimes semblance of other experiences around that individual could just conjure a reminder of the painful, hurtful experience. For example, sexual abuse, one of them, outside of mental abuse, emotional abuse, physical abuse. These things could be very damaging, long lasting, and FIFA, in its wisdom, have now created this safeguarding program so that the safeguarding officers and other persons who are closely attached to youth development programs could be able to detect, observe, identify, recognize signs of student athletes or players or youths who may have experienced some traumatic experiences in their life, and there are steps to be taken by getting such information and moving it to the higher authorities, even if in the case with proper protocol being followed, reporting it in a very discreet manner, which confidence become a very important part, and sending it on to the Children's Authority of Trinidad and Tobago, and in some cases to the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service to be addressed. That's after and in addition to investigation and disciplinary matters being addressed to the individual by the TTFA through the safeguarding unit, because it means that persons could either be suspended or even be expelled based on the gravity of the offense committed.
How do you differentiate the coaching manual from a coach who is just stern? If the manual says you can't raise your voice at a player, as opposed to being stern. Give me 10 push-ups, whatever you're little, and maybe use a term that may not be in keeping with what the manual says. The coach's intent really is to bring the best thing or to get the best out of the player. How do we safeguard the coach in that instance, whose ambition is to bring these fellas up to the required standard? Bring some perspective.
Very well, and that is why we have a code of ethics, a code of conduct within the TTFA self-safeguarding unit, and also all clubs or academies are now also being advised to have their code of conduct, so that therefore the coach or the coaching staff within the club or academy is aware that these are guidelines that need to be followed. And while in no way whatsoever you want to impact on the coach conveying information to his or her players, that it must be done in a manner of respect, where there is that level of consideration taken for the safety of the player, mentally, physically, and otherwise. So even interacting with the player, if you want to get the best out of the player, not that you're going to spoon feed them, but certainly you will speak to them in a respectable manner, and not utilize training activities, for example, push-ups, as a punitive measure, because push-ups in itself is a very useful, beneficial, productive activity to help build strength, especially in the upper body, even with the core. So you don't want to use something that is a meaningful, valuable, impactful, and beneficial to the human anatomy and use that as in a punitive way. So certainly raising your voice, as long as it is done in such a way that it doesn't create any offense or insult to the player, can be done. But as in everything, it must be done in a very controlled and respectable manner.
Discipline is one of the hallmarks of making any team effective on the field. And so there has to be a disciplinary approach by the coach. Let's say a fella show up late and he says, give me 10 laps. Would that be deemed as abusive before he can start playing with the rest of the team? And let's say he's constantly late or is very disregarding to time. And we know how coaches are with time. And let's say he's given, beside the push-ups, that can be a bit too, as you say, punitive, another punishment. And the point I'm getting at, can the coach execute or exercise punishment or punitive measures to bring these guys to where he wants them to be? You are going to bring home the gold, and I'm going to ensure that the discipline is maintained here. Give me 10 laps, boy. What is wrong with that, sir?
Right, and the 10 laps could very well increase the personal level of endurance and stamina. But certainly you don't want to leave them running there for maybe more than the 10 laps that you have indicated. Otherwise, that becomes now insensitive and inconsiderate. Anything that can be utilized to instill the self-discipline, I'm sure will be incorporated in a very acceptable way by the academy and by the club. But anytime it starts bordering on abuse, and we have a wide variety of abuse falling into the categories like the physical, the mental, the emotional, psychological, then with the code of ethics attached to the club or the academy and emanating out of the TTFA, one will need to be very mindful of it, not to tread too closely on it, because at the end of it, while you want to instill discipline, which we totally advocate and encourage, we don't want in any way for players' well-being to be affected because of the negative impact or approach taken by coaches and other adults attached to the club or the academy.
Mm-hmm. All right, so for your certification in coaching, just speak to what, right, let's say I'm an established coach and this new entity has, I have my documentation, I'm a professional coach, certified by FIFA and what have you. And now I have to be mindful how I discharge my duties as a coach, even though I took the team to World Cup with my method or the method that was used. And now I have to be walking on eggshells, so to speak, because I cannot exercise what was successful in the past, because that could be deemed as abusive. I'm trying to be very clear here. So with this new manual, he has to be mindful by all the detailed areas of concern that may be considered to be abusive. I'm cautious here. Mm-hmm. Yeah, go ahead. You got the question?
Could you just repeat
the what I'm saying is, the seasoned, I could use Bertil Sinclair, for example, mm-hmm. or Dwight York, who was under a manual or a coaching manual that brought success. Some may say Bertil was tough, and sometimes you do need a tough coach. But what, I'm rephrasing the question, right? So what would be deemed a tough coach, if not to, I don't want to say punish, but to ensure discipline is maintained? There are certain measures that he has to talk. I will give you a quick example. I remember the last of coaching school on the Masonal grounds. The guys were out there playing what Coach Bertil Sinclair felt that was not what he taught them. There's the first half. Second, or when the whistle blew for the first half, he said no one drink any water, sit right there on the floor. And he had given them a lecture. I eavesdropped on the lecture that he gave them for the maybe let's say less than 10 minutes. And when they were done, he said, okay, go drink your water and go back out there and do just what I told you. Now, that's a successful coach. And when those guys went out there, sir, they mashed, the unit that went out there was a total different team that started in the first half. And they wiped out the team that they were playing against. Now, that may be deemed harsh by some parents looking on. Why don't let my son go and drink your water? Or whatever, and take evasive action against an approach that would bring out the best by just a lecture. I want to get where, if we are not pushing the envelope too much, whereby we are nurturing a bunch of fellas that may not be able to execute well against those. And I want to ask, is this formula international or is this just Trinidad and Tobago?
Well, I am so happy I've drawn that really explicit example of Bertil Sinclair and I really want to applaud even Bertil Sinclair, because what would have been dangerous there is if he didn't give them the water. That one would have been really totally unacceptable. But eventually, he allowed them to go and drink the water, which showed, listen, you weren't giving me exactly what I wanted out there. You weren't following my game plan. You weren't following the tactical strategy. And you will now have to certainly listen to what I'm saying, even while you're feeling thirsty. So those guys had really no choice than to listen. But he did the rightful thing by allowing them to drink water. As we know now, FIFA, in its wisdom, has what we consider, because of the high humidity, a 1-minute water break in both halves, based on the temperature. And even when it is so extreme, they have a 3-minute cooling break. That's to tell you how important it is. So I'm happy that Bertil Sinclair used that approach, but eventually he was able to say, okay, go and get some water. Now, if we look at, for example, Australia cricketing team. Now, this may sound a bit unorthodox, but they do it in such a way to push their athletes, and that is why they are one of the top cricketing nations, in particular in the world. We know in normal physiological and physical education approach that you train hard one day and you train easy the next day, so you have recovery. But the Australians, by and large, they do a back-to-back, very challenging and very hard training session, followed by a recovery day. So while maybe the world or most of others will train a hard alternating by an easy one, they have 2 training days that are considered very challenging. So when you push yourself, right, give and take, all the other conditions are in place, and you push yourself to that, when you come against an opponent who is hard, challenging one day, difficult, easy, difficult, then you can see how the Australians will have an edge. So the discipline is important, as I said, and sometimes in doing it, you instill, sometimes you affect, and in most cases, you want to get the best out of the players, and certainly that is acceptable, as long as in no way whatsoever does it border on the abuse of the child in providing, because what the coach wants is to bring the best out of the child or the player, and you want a player playing for you. You don't want to put them in such a way, treat them in such a way that they now get turned off or disinterested or interested, I should say, in playing the game. You want to keep them there. You want to encourage them while you have that level of discipline, which is crucial, self-discipline, because even arriving on time is important. And we know, in addition to other areas, that there are many other approaches that can be taken by the coaching staff, by the club, by the academy. You can deny them privileges within the club itself, with benefits that the players, you can deny them that until they come around eventually. But it's all about ensuring that at the end, that the safety, the protection, the goodwill, the welfare of the player, while being part of an academy or club, or even playing for a national team, is certainly supported as they move forward in their footballing or their sporting career.
Excellent. Mr. Gonzales, we want to thank you for being with us this morning, and I think we all understand and we support our youngsters and, of course, all the coaches. Thank you for being with us this morning.
A pleasure being here, and thank you very much for having me. Have a blessed day.